My name is Lorraine, and I am 76 years old. For most of my life, I poured my heart into raising my family. I worked as a schoolteacher for over 30 years, saved every penny with my late husband, Harold, and together we built a comfortable life that was meant to carry not just us, but our children and grandchildren too. Harold passed away a decade ago, and though the loneliness often crept in, I found comfort in knowing he left me with wisdom, love, and an estate worth far more than most people would imagine. Through careful investments, the quiet home we once bought on the outskirts of town grew into a portfolio, and by the time Harold's voice was only a memory, I sat atop a fortune of nearly $50 million. But none of them knew that part. My children, my son Daniel and daughter Rebecca, thought I lived simply off Harold's pension and a modest savings account. I didn't correct them. I thought, perhaps foolishly, that it was better to let their true characters show without dangling wealth before them. What I discovered instead was how easily love can twist when people no longer see you as useful. That truth revealed itself fully on Thanksgiving Eve. The house smelled of roasting turkey and spiced cider. I had been in the kitchen since morning, my knees aching, hands shaking a little as I stirred the cranberry sauce, but determined to make the dinner special. I wanted to believe this year would be different, that maybe gratitude would replace the coldness that had been growing between me and my family. My grandson, David, was sitting in the living room, scrolling on his phone. 16 years old, tall, handsome, already wearing designer sneakers and the latest watch. His parents indulged him, showered him with expensive gifts, while he hardly offered a thank you in return. When I carried out a tray of appetizers, smiling, hoping to bring him into the warmth of the holiday spirit, he didn't even look up. Instead, as I set the tray down, I heard him mutter under his breath, "You're just a burden." The word struck me harder than any slap. A burden. After the nights, I stayed awake rocking his father to sleep as a colicky baby. After the years I sacrificed so Rebecca could finish college. After selling my wedding jewelry once to help Daniel with a failed business venture. I had given everything, piece by piece, and here stood my grandson, sneering at me like I was excess baggage in my own home. I froze in the doorway, my heart pounding, but I said nothing. He didn't know I'd heard. Or maybe he did, and he simply didn't care. Minutes later, Rebecca and Daniel walked in with shopping bags. David leapt to his feet then, his indifference replaced by eager excitement. He tore into one of the bags and pulled out a sleek designer bag with a golden clasp. He laughed and hugged them, finally showing joy, not for family, not for love, but for an object that cost more than some family's rent. I stood there quietly, watching. My hands trembled as I wiped them on my apron. And in that moment, while they celebrated material things, a decision formed in my heart. I would not leave my legacy to those who saw me as a burden. That night, as they clinked glasses and laughed around the table, none of them noticed my silence. But I noticed someone else, Emily. She was the babysitter who had been helping around the house these past few months. Just 19, working 2 jobs, saving for nursing school. She wasn't blood, yet every time she greeted me, it was with warmth. She called me family when no one else seemed to remember I was. I felt Harold's voice in my memory then. Lorraine, money shows who people really are. Watch closely. So I watched. I listened. I smiled politely. And I planned. The next morning, Thanksgiving Day, I drove to my lawyer's office before the family stirred from their sleep. I placed the thick folder of estate documents on his desk. "I want to make some changes," I said. When he asked who the new beneficiary would be, I whispered Emily's name. That's when the true story began. Because I knew, once the truth surfaced, the family who called me a burden would learn that the burden they cast aside was the very hand holding their future. And I knew the day they found out would tear open every hidden crack in this family. But I didn't realize just how far they would go once they discovered they'd been cut off. And that was only the beginning. When I lay in bed that night after hearing David call me a burden, I couldn't close my eyes. The word kept echoing in my head like a drumbeat. Burden. As if all the years of love, sacrifice, and labor had been erased and replaced with a label that made me feel smaller than dust. But in those sleepless hours, my mind began to wander, not to anger, but to memory, to the long, winding road that had brought me here. Perhaps, to understand why their words cut me so deeply, you need to know how much I once gave. I was born in 1949, in a small town where women were expected to marry young, raise children, and never dream too big. But I always dreamed. I wanted to teach, to stand in a classroom, to place books in children's hands, to open their minds to possibilities beyond what our little town said was possible. My parents thought it foolish, but Harold believed in me. We married when I was 20. He was a quiet man, a mechanic, broad-shouldered, with a laugh that could fill any room. He worked long hours, so I could finish my teaching degree. When I finally stood in front of my first class of third graders, chalk in hand, I thought I was the richest woman alive. Those years weren't easy. We lived in a modest house with peeling paint and creaky floors. But what we lacked in money, we made up for in love. Harold would come home covered in grease. I'd hand him a plate of reheated stew, and we'd sit together, dreaming of the future. He'd always say, "Lorraine, one day we'll make it. Just wait and see." And, in time, we did. I taught school for 3 decades. I worked nights tutoring children who struggled. Harold started a small repair shop that, to our surprise, grew into a business serving nearly every farmer in our county. We pinched pennies, invested carefully, bought land when others were selling. Slowly, our savings grew. But money wasn't the treasure we counted most. Our greatest riches were our children, Daniel and Rebecca. When Daniel was born, I remember sitting up all night, rocking him through colic, humming lullabies even when my throat burned with exhaustion. Harold would hold him against his chest, whispering, "We'll give you the world, son." When Rebecca arrived 2 years later, our joy doubled. Harold joked we were rich in diapers and poor in sleep, but he never complained. We poured everything into those children. Harold took extra jobs when Daniel wanted to play football and needed gear we couldn't afford. I sold my wedding earrings once, the only jewelry Harold had ever given me, so Rebecca could go on her high school trip to Washington, D.C. I remember her face lighting up when she saw the White House. I told myself it was worth it, even as my ears felt bare without those golden hoops. There were times we went without new clothes or vacations, but our children never did. I thought that's what love was, sacrifice. And I believed they understood it. But as the years passed, I began to see tiny cracks. Daniel grew ambitious, but also entitled. After college, he wanted to start a business. Harold and I co-signed the loan, emptied part of our retirement savings, and gave him what he asked for. When the business failed within a year, he shrugged it off. "You can afford it," he told me, as if decades of saving and sacrifice were just numbers on paper, easily replaced. Rebecca was softer, at least at first. She leaned on me when her marriage crumbled, moved back into our home with David still in diapers. I took care of him while she went back to work, fed him, changed him, sang him lullabies just as I once had his father. I thought, surely, he'll grow up remembering Grandma's arms when he cried. But gratitude has a way of fading when people start seeing you as permanent scaffolding, always there, always holding them up, even when they stop looking back. The real shift came after Harold passed. It was sudden, heart attack in the middle of the night. One moment I was beside him, the next I was clutching cold sheets where his body had been. The grief nearly broke me. For months, I drifted, barely speaking, barely eating. The world felt hollow without his laugh filling our home. It was in that emptiness that I began to notice how my children treated me differently. They came around, yes, but their eyes lingered on the house more than my heart. They asked subtle questions about accounts, about what Dad left behind. It was as if Harold's absence had turned me from a mother into a vault they were trying to open. And still, I gave. When Rebecca needed money for a down payment, I wrote her a check. When Daniel's second business attempt needed a cash injection, I handed over another. I told myself, this is what Harold would want. We built this for them. But each check I wrote seemed to erase the sacrifices of the past. The more I gave, the less they saw me. I think back to one Christmas, maybe 5 years ago. I had saved for months to buy David a bicycle he'd been begging for. When he unwrapped it, his face fell. "It's not the brand I wanted," he complained, pushing it aside. Later, I overheard Rebecca whispering to him, "Don't worry, Grandma doesn't know what's cool." I laughed it off that night, but inside, something cracked. And yet, I held on to hope. I thought, maybe time would soften them. Maybe they would see me again. Not as a bank, not as an old woman who cooked and babysat, but as their mother, their grandmother, the woman who had given them everything she could. That's why Thanksgiving meant so much to me. It wasn't just a meal. It was the symbol of everything I longed for: family, gratitude, warmth. I wanted to believe we could gather around the table and remember what mattered. But instead, I was met with the word burden. I replayed it over and over. The tone in David's voice, the casual cruelty. And when I saw him unwrap that designer bag and beam with joy, it was like watching the truth unwrap itself right in front of me. They didn't see me anymore. And that's when Emily's face came to mind. She wasn't family by blood. She was just the babysitter, the girl who came in the afternoons to help with chores and keep David company when his mother was busy. But she treated me like more than furniture. She asked me how my day was. She sat with me on the porch and listened to my stories. She even helped me with my knitting once, fumbling with the yarn, laughing when she dropped a stitch, saying, "You're more like my grandma than my own." I feel like family here. Family. A single word, but one I hadn't heard sincerely in years. And in that moment, lying awake on Thanksgiving Eve, I knew Harold's words were echoing for a reason. He always told me money would reveal the truth. And now I had seen it. Those who shared my blood did not share my heart. But this young girl, with nothing to gain, gave me the respect my children had long abandoned. So I decided I would not let my life's work, Harold's legacy, our $50 million fortune, fall into the hands of people who saw me as a burden. I would leave it to someone who called me family. What I didn't know was that this decision would ignite a storm I never could have imagined, one that would tear apart the very fabric of my family and leave scars none of us would ever forget. And that storm began the very next morning. The morning of Thanksgiving Day, I woke up before the sun. My hands shook as I buttoned my cardigan, but not from the cold. It was the weight of what I was about to do. For 76 years, I had played my role: the giver, the fixer, the quiet backbone holding everyone else upright. But that morning, I was about to rewrite everything. I slid into my old Buick, the one Harold had insisted on keeping even when the children teased him about driving a grandma car. It sputtered before starting, but the sound felt almost comforting, as though Harold himself had nudged the ignition to remind me I wasn't alone. The roads were quiet, lined with trees stripped bare by late autumn. I drove past houses with glowing kitchen windows, families already preparing for feasts. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I being too harsh? Was I letting one cruel word from my grandson turn me into someone bitter? But then I remembered. The Christmas bicycle. The whispered, "She doesn't know what's cool." The endless checks that never came back with a thank you. The way Daniel looked at me after Harold died, not with grief, but with calculation, as if wondering what he could extract. And finally, David's voice, sharp and dismissive. "You're just a burden."
No.
This wasn't about one word. It was about years of silence, years of invisibility, years of being erased by the very people I had raised. I pulled into the parking lot of my lawyer's office. The building was dark, save for one light in the corner office. Mr. Harlan had been Harold's friend long before he was our lawyer. I had called him the night before, asking if he could meet me on a holiday morning. He hadn't hesitated. He opened the door with a small smile. "Lorraine, I thought I might see you today." We sat across from each other, and I slid the thick folder onto his desk. My hands hovered over it for a moment, trembling. Not because I doubted my choice, but because of the finality of it. Once I signed those papers, there would be no turning back. "I need to change my will," I said, my voice steady even as my chest fluttered. He adjusted his glasses, scanning my face. "Are you sure?" I nodded.
Yes.
I want everything left to Emily Thompson. His eyebrows rose slightly. The babysitter? Yes, I whispered. She treats me like family. She sees me. For a moment, silence hung in the room. Then he nodded slowly, as if he understood something deeper than words. All right then. Let's make it official. By the time I left his office, the sun had risen, painting the sky in pale orange. I clutched the envelope of documents to my chest. My footsteps felt lighter, my heart stronger. For the first time in years, I had taken control. But I didn't realize how quickly control can slip through your fingers when secrets start to unravel. When I returned home, the house was buzzing. Rebecca was in the kitchen, barking orders at Emily, who was helping set the table. Daniel was on the phone in the living room, his voice low but urgent. And David? Well, David was sprawled on the couch, scrolling his phone as though the holiday existed only to bore him. I slipped into the kitchen, hoping to keep my mood calm. But I overheard Rebecca snapping at Emily. Don't put the plates like that. Honestly, do you even know what you're doing? Emily flushed red, murmuring an apology. My heart twisted. This girl was working 2 jobs, giving up her own holiday to help us, and yet my daughter treated her like dirt. I stepped closer. She's doing just fine, Rebecca. Rebecca turned to me, her eyes sharp. Mother, stay out of it. You don't know how I want things done. Her words stung. Stay out of it. In my own home. I looked at Emily, who gave me a small, embarrassed smile. My heart softened. If only Rebecca knew what decision I had made that morning, perhaps she would speak differently. But of course, she didn't. None of them did. Dinner preparations dragged on, and the tension thickened. At one point, Daniel came into the kitchen, sighing loudly. Mom, are you sure you can handle all this? You look tired. Maybe it's time you stop hosting Thanksgiving altogether. The dismissal was casual, but I heard the undertone. You're too old. You're not useful anymore. I forced a smile. I can handle it. But inside, I thought, one day, Daniel, you'll wish you had let me handle more. The meal itself was a blur of chatter and laughter, but not the warm kind. It was the brittle, surface-level kind, full of sharp edges. David tore through his plate without so much as a thank you. Rebecca complained about work. Daniel spoke endlessly about a business opportunity he was pursuing, dropping hints about needing investors. And not once did anyone look at me with gratitude. Except Emily. She sat quietly, helping me refill glasses, gently patting my hand when she saw my eyes drift. When she stood to clear plates, she whispered, "This was wonderful, Lorraine. Thank you for letting me share it with you." Share it with me. The words were like a bomb. But as the evening wound down, something happened that would change everything. Daniel leaned back in his chair, swirling the wine in his glass. You know, Mom, I was thinking it might be time to discuss the future. About your estate. You're not getting younger. My fork clattered onto my plate. Rebecca glanced at him sharply, then at me. Daniel continued, unbothered. I mean, we should plan things properly. To avoid confusion later. Right? Rebecca gave a tight smile. Of course. That's only practical. I felt my stomach twist. Practical. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Thanksgiving dinner, and they were circling me like vultures over a meal they hadn't even cooked. I swallowed hard. We'll talk about it another time. But inside, I thought, if only you knew. If only you knew what I signed this morning. I excused myself soon after, retreating to my bedroom. But their voices carried through the walls. Daniel, she's sitting on something, I know it. Rebecca, she won't tell us. But once she's gone, Daniel, then we'll make sure it's handled. Don't worry. My heart pounded in my chest. I pressed my hands to my mouth to stifle the sob rising in my throat. They weren't just indifferent. They weren't just careless. They were waiting for me to die, like my life was an obstacle standing between them and what they thought they deserved. And yet, as I sat in the dark, tears streaking my face, I also felt something new, resolve. I had been invisible too long, silenced too long, but I had already taken the first step. And though they didn't know it yet, The game had already changed. Still, I knew once they discovered the truth, that the inheritance wasn't theirs. They wouldn't take it quietly. And what they did next would shock me more than anything I had ever endured. Thanksgiving night should have ended with laughter, dishes piled high in the sink, and the soft hum of gratitude. That's what Harold and I always believed holidays were for, a time to remind ourselves that love was worth more than anything money could buy. But that year, as I lay in bed listening to the muffled voices of my children plotting about the estate, I knew gratitude had left this house long ago. The next morning, the air was heavy. My body ached as I pulled myself from bed, but I forced myself to keep moving. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, laid out toast. I thought maybe, just maybe, after a night of rest, things would feel lighter. But as I set the table, David slumped into the kitchen, yawning dramatically. He plopped down and groaned. Ugh. Do we have to eat here? Can't we just go out for breakfast like normal people? David, I said softly, I made this for you. For everyone. He rolled his eyes. Yeah, but everything here is so boring. My friends eat at diners. You don't get it.
Boring.
That word, paired with burden, lodged deep in my chest. Before I could respond, Rebecca walked in, scrolling her phone. She didn't even glance at the table I had set. Mom, you should really think about hiring help. You're too old to be cooking all the time. Honestly, this looks exhausting. I stared at her, the words caught in my throat. Too old. As if age had stripped me of worth. Daniel joined us last, dressed in his suit jacket, his hair slicked back. He didn't even sit before launching into his pitch. So listen, Mom, I've been talking to a few investors. This new opportunity could be huge. I just need some upfront capital. You could change my life with one signature. One signature. The same words Harold used when we bought our first home. But Harold's words were filled with love. Daniel's were filled with hunger. I don't have money to invest in risky businesses, I said quietly. His jaw tightened. You do. You're just hoarding it. It's selfish, Mom. You sit on everything while we're out here struggling.
Selfish.
That was the word that broke me. After decades of giving, after every sacrifice, to hear my own son call me selfish was like being stabbed with my own kindness. Emily entered then, carrying a basket of laundry she'd folded. She smiled brightly, trying to lift the air. Good morning, everyone. Lorraine, the laundry's all done. Of course she did the laundry, Rebecca muttered under her breath. She's trying to make herself look good. Always playing this sweet little helper. Emily froze, her face flushing. She opened her mouth to speak, but closed it again, her eyes darting to me. Something inside me snapped. Rebecca, I said sharply, louder than I intended. She's helping because she cares. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. The room went silent. Daniel's eyes narrowed. David smirked, sensing drama. Rebecca slammed her phone down on the counter. Don't you dare lecture me, Mother. I gave up years of my life taking care of you after Dad died. Do you think I wanted to move back here? Do you think I enjoyed scraping by while you sat in this house? Taking care of me? I shot back, my voice trembling but strong. I was the one taking care of David. I was the one cooking your meals, paying your bills when you couldn't. Don't twist the truth. Her face reddened with fury. You're impossible. Maybe David was right. You are just a burden. The words landed harder than ever. I staggered back, clutching the edge of the table. Emily stepped forward, reaching for me. But before she could, Daniel's voice cut through the air. You know what, Mom? If you won't help us while you're alive, then maybe it's time we start preparing for when you're gone. My blood ran cold. Rebecca gasped softly, as if even she hadn't expected him to say it aloud. David leaned back in his chair, smirking like it was all a game. Gone? I whispered. Is that what you're waiting for? Daniel didn't flinch. We're not stupid, Mom. We know you've got something hidden. And when the time comes, we'll make sure it doesn't go to waste. It was no longer suspicion. No longer whispers. It was open greed, staring me in the face. And then it happened. Rebecca grabbed the basket of folded laundry Emily had brought in and dumped it on the floor, clothes scattering. Stop pretending you're family, she spat at Emily. You're nothing but hired help. Emily's eyes welled with tears. She bent down to gather the clothes, but I dropped to my knees beside her, my old bones protesting. Together, we picked them up. My hands shook as I touched hers. You are family, I whispered to her, loud enough for everyone to hear. More family than anyone in this room has been to me in years. The room erupted. Rebecca stormed out, shouting. Daniel cursed under his breath, muttering about lawyers. David laughed, cruel and sharp. And Emily, sweet Emily, looked at me with wide, teary eyes, as if she couldn't believe I'd said it aloud. But I meant it. Every word. That moment marked the breaking point. The line had been drawn, and I knew nothing would ever be the same. What I didn't know was how quickly things would spiral, and how far my own children would go once they discovered they had already been cut out. And the way they retaliated, it would chill me to my bones. The day after Thanksgiving, the house was heavy with silence. Not the peaceful kind Harold and I once knew when we'd sit on the porch and watch the leaves fall, but a suffocating silence, thick, bitter, full of unspoken words that still echoed in my ears.
Burden.
Selfish. Gone. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, the steam rising into the cold air. My hands wrapped tightly around the mug, as though its warmth could protect me from the chill settling inside my chest. Emily had come early, offering to help clean, but really she was here to sit with me. She knew I needed company. Lorraine, she said softly, sliding into the chair beside me. Don't let them break you. I heard everything yesterday. You don't deserve any of it. Her words stung because of their kindness. They were simple, but I hadn't heard that kind of sincerity from my own children in years. I reached over, placed my hand over hers, and whispered, "Thank you, Emily. You don't know what that means to me." In her eyes, I saw what I used to see in my children's when they were young: trust, love, the simple desire to be near me because I was me, not because of what I could provide. That was when I knew my decision to rewrite the will had been right. But the fear still lingered. What would happen when my children found out? The first sign came that afternoon. Daniel appeared in the kitchen, his phone still pressed to his ear. He was speaking to someone in hushed, urgent tones. When he saw me, he ended the call abruptly. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded, bracing myself. "Mom, listen, I know you're being stubborn about helping me with this new venture.
But you have to understand, this isn't just about me.
It's about the family. About legacy. Don't you want to see your grandchildren succeed?" I swallowed hard. "I've already given more than you know, Daniel." He leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Then give more."
You can't take it with you, Mom.
What's the point of hoarding it?
Hoarding.
Another cruel word. I'm not hoarding, I whispered. I'm protecting. Protecting who? He demanded. I looked away, refusing to answer. If I let my eyes linger too long, I knew I'd give away my secret. He sighed, frustrated, and stormed out. But his words rattled in my head. Protecting who? The truth was, I wasn't just protecting Emily. I was protecting myself, my dignity, my years of sacrifice, my right to decide who deserved the fruits of Harold's and my labor. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I went into Harold's study, the one room I had left untouched since his death. His books still lined the shelves, his pipe sat on the desk, the faint scent of tobacco lingering like a ghost. I opened the drawer where I kept our old photo albums. Flipping through them, I saw Daniel and Rebecca as children. Chubby cheeks, toothless grins, arms wrapped around Harold's neck. For a moment, I felt my heart soften. Had they really turned into people who saw me as nothing but an obstacle? Or had I failed them somehow, raising them to believe love was conditional on what they could gain? I pressed my hand against Harold's picture. "What would you do?" I whispered, and in the quiet, I imagined his voice again. "Lorraine, strength isn't in shouting. It's in knowing when to move quietly." Quietly. That became my mantra. The next morning, I called Mr. Harlan, my lawyer. "We need to talk again," I said. When I sat in his office later that day, I laid out my fears. "They're circling me, Edward.
Like wolves.
If they ever find out what I did, they'll come after Emily and me. I need to make sure this is airtight. He leaned back, tapping his pen against the desk. We can structure it so they can't contest the will. But Lorraine, are you prepared for the fallout? Once they know, it won't be pretty. I thought about Rebecca's sharp words, Daniel's hungry eyes, David's cruel smirk. Then I thought about Emily's warm smile. Yes, I said firmly. I'm prepared. But the truth was, I wasn't. Not for how quickly things would escalate. When I returned home, I found Rebecca sitting in the living room, rifling through a stack of papers. What are you doing? I demanded. She jumped, shoving the papers back onto the table. Nothing. Just sorting some of your mail. You're welcome. But I knew better.
She was looking for something. Proof.
That night at dinner, she and Daniel exchanged looks when they thought I wasn't watching. I knew then they suspected. They didn't know the full truth, but they sensed it. And their suspicion was more dangerous than knowledge, because it made them reckless. Days passed in a blur. Emily continued to come by, her presence a comfort. She'd sit with me over tea, asking about Harold, about my teaching days, about the children when they were young. Sometimes she'd even laugh at my stories, her laughter filling the house in a way that reminded me of how it used to be. But my children grew colder. Daniel's requests for money became demands. Rebecca grew sharper, snapping at me for little things, how I folded laundry, how I left dishes in the sink. David barely looked up from his phone. One evening, Daniel cornered me in the hallway. Mom, tell me the truth. Did you change your will? My blood ran cold. Why would you ask that? He smirked, but his eyes were hard. Because you've been secretive.
And I know you, Mom.
You don't keep secrets unless you're hiding something big. I forced a shaky laugh. Daniel, you're imagining things. But inside, panic roared. How did he know? Had Rebecca found something in the mail? Had Emily accidentally let something slip? That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in my life. My own children in my own house, and I didn't feel safe. The following Sunday, we went to church as we always had. I sat in the pew, clutching my Bible, trying to draw strength from the hymns. But as the pastor spoke about honor and love, I felt tears welling. Not because of the sermon, but because of the irony. Here we were supposed to be bound by love, and yet my family was bound only by greed. After the service, Emily offered me her arm as we walked to the car. You okay? She asked softly. I nodded, but I wasn't okay. Not at all. That evening, when I sat in the living room, Daniel made another comment about my estate. Rebecca added, You know, Mom, people your age don't live forever. You should at least make sure things are in order. For us.
For us.
The audacity. My hands shook, but I held my tongue. Harold's voice echoed again. Quiet moves, Lorraine. Quiet moves. So I smiled, pretending to agree. And later that night, I quietly called Mr. Harlan again. Draw up the final documents, I said. Make them impossible to contest. But deep down, I knew. When the truth came out, the storm would be fierce. And I didn't realize just how soon the storm would break, or how dangerous it would become. The days after Thanksgiving blurred together, but something in the air had shifted. I could feel it with every step I took in my own home. My children no longer spoke around me with warmth or even politeness. Their words had sharpened into knives, each glance filled with calculation. But I remembered Harold's voice. Quiet moves, Lorraine. Quiet moves. So, I smiled when they questioned me. I nodded when they made snide remarks. I let them believe I was weak, clueless, and fading. What they didn't know was that, behind their backs, I was building walls they'd never climb. Emily became my quiet ally. She'd arrive each morning with that same bright smile, the one that reminded me not all hope was lost in this world. While she folded laundry or scrubbed dishes, I'd slip into Harold's study and make calls. Mr. Harlan and I worked like shadows, silent, precise, leaving no trace for my children to sniff out. One morning, as Emily dusted the shelves, I sat at the desk and whispered into the phone. Yes, Edward, move the accounts. Transfer everything into the trust. And lock it so only Emily's name can access it once I'm gone. Emily looked up, startled. Are you sure you want to tell me this, Lorraine? I gave her a tired smile. Sweetheart, I trust you more than anyone else in this house. Her eyes filled with tears. I won't let you down. For the first time in years, I felt safe in someone's promise. But outside that study, danger was closing in. Daniel became restless. He paced the halls, his phone glued to his ear, muttering about debts and investors. One evening, I overheard him in the garage, his voice low and furious. She has it, I know she does. Stop pressuring me. I'll get it. She won't hold out forever. I froze in the doorway, my heart thudding.
Who was he talking to?
Loan sharks? Business partners? Whoever it was, I knew his desperation was growing. And desperate men make reckless choices. Rebecca wasn't any better. She grew colder by the day, snapping at me for the smallest things. If I left a light on, she scolded me. If I asked David to set the table, she hissed, "Don't bother him, he's busy." Busy, on his phone, sneering at me, muttering under his breath. One night, as I carried a tray of cocoa into the living room, I overheard Rebecca say to Daniel, "If she won't tell us, we'll find out ourselves. There's got to be paperwork somewhere." I stopped in my tracks, the mugs trembling in my hands. They were looking for proof. That's when I started hiding things. I moved Harold's files out of the study and into a lockbox I placed under my bed. I began shredding any mail that hinted at accounts. And when I left the house, I carried a small envelope of important papers with me, tucked into my purse like a secret heartbeat. But hiding wasn't enough. I needed to move forward. So I began making visits, always telling Rebecca I was going for a walk. In truth, I was visiting the bank, finalizing the trust, ensuring Emily's name was written in ink they couldn't erase. Each signature felt like a stitch in armor I was building for myself. Yet with each move I made, the tension at home worsened. One evening, as Emily and I cooked dinner together, David stomped into the kitchen. He grabbed a soda from the fridge without a word, then glanced at Emily and sneered. "Why are you always here? Don't you have your own family?" Emily flushed. I'm just helping." He smirked. Helping? Or trying to take what's ours? Before I could stop myself, I slammed the spoon onto the counter. "David, enough. She's done more for me than you ever have." His eyes widened, shocked that I had raised my voice. Then he scoffed, muttered, "Whatever, old lady," and stormed off. Emily looked at me, her hands trembling. "Lorraine, he suspects something." "I know," I whispered. "But let them think what they want. That's my armor now." But armor can only hold so long. 2 nights later, I woke to a creak outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, listening. The knob jiggled, soft at first, then harder. My heart raced. I had locked it before bed. "Mom," Daniel's voice hissed from the hall. "Why's your door locked?" I stayed silent, my body trembling beneath the quilt. "Mom," he barked, rattling the knob again. Finally, his footsteps retreated. But I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I lay awake, clutching the lockbox under my bed like it was a lifeline. The next morning, I found Rebecca in the kitchen, her smile tight. "Why did you lock your door last night, Mother? What are you hiding?" "I wanted privacy," I said flatly. She laughed bitterly. "Privacy? From your own children? That's suspicious." Emily, who had just walked in with groceries, shot me a worried glance. Suspicion was turning into obsession. Later that day, while Emily vacuumed the living room, I slipped outside to the garden. I knelt by Harold's old rosebush, pretending to prune, but really I was catching my breath. My chest felt tight, the weight of secrets pressing down. That's when I heard it, voices through the open window. "Daniel, she's hiding something, I swear it." "Rebecca, I've looked everywhere. She's locking things up now." "Daniel, then we'll have to force her hand. She can't keep it from us forever."
Force her hand.
I stumbled back, nearly falling into the rosebush. My knees ached as I stood, my heart racing. They weren't just waiting anymore, they were plotting. That evening, I called Mr. Harlan again. My voice shook as I said, "Edward, make sure it's done." Finalize everything. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. It's already done, he reassured me. It's ironclad. They can't touch it. His words should have calmed me, but deep down I knew, when greedy people are cornered, they don't give up. They lash out. And lash out they did. It started small. Rebecca accidentally threw away some of my mail. Daniel forgot to refill my prescriptions from the pharmacy. David left his things scattered around, daring me to complain so he could roll his eyes and call me nagging. But then it escalated. One evening, I came into the kitchen to find my lockbox sitting open on the table. Paper scattered. My heart nearly stopped. Where did you get this? I cried, rushing forward. Rebecca crossed her arms. We found it. You can't hide things from us, Mother. Not anymore. My hands shook as I gathered the papers, shoving them back into the box. This is mine. You have no right. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes cold. We have every right. We're your children. If you're making decisions about your estate, we should know. You'll know when the time is right, I snapped, my voice louder than I'd ever dared. The room went silent. For the first time in years, I saw fear flash in their eyes. They realized I wasn't as weak as they thought. But fear is dangerous. And I knew in that moment, they would stop at nothing to break me. And what they did next would push me to the edge of everything I thought I could endure. The night I caught them rifling through my lockbox, something inside me shifted. Until then, I had been afraid of losing their love, afraid of confrontation, afraid of being alone. But as I held those papers to my chest and saw the hunger in my children's eyes, I understood. There was nothing left to lose. Love had already been replaced by greed. So I decided to stop being afraid. But I didn't let them see that. Oh no, I let them believe I was rattled, confused, maybe even slipping into frailty. That was my armor. They thought they were circling prey, but in truth, I was leading them into a trap of their own making. The very next morning, I sat down with Emily over tea. She looked at me with wide, worried eyes. Lorraine, what are you going to do? They're not stopping, they're getting worse. I squeezed her hand. I've already done it. The will is finalized. Everything is locked. They can scream, they can dig, they can threaten, but when the time comes, they'll have nothing. And you, my dear, will have everything. Her lips trembled. But aren't you scared? What if they hurt you? I hesitated. Truthfully, yes, I was terrified. But I couldn't let her see that. I've lived 76 years, Emily. I've been through war, loss, heartbreak. I can survive my own children's betrayal. What I can't survive is letting them win. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw her not just as a babysitter, not just as a young woman with kind eyes, but as the granddaughter I never truly had. But while I found comfort in Emily, the storm with my children only grew. 2 days later, Daniel came home fuming. He slammed his keys on the counter, his face red. I had another investor back out today. Do you know why, Mom? Because I can't give them assurance. They want collateral. Something in writing. And you're sitting here holding the golden ticket. I'm not giving you anything, I said firmly. He stepped closer, towering over me. You think this is a game? You think you can play with me? I'm your son. If you don't trust me, who do you trust? Emily, who had been folding laundry in the corner, muttered under her breath, maybe someone who doesn't see her as a bank. Daniel whipped his head toward her, his eyes blazing. Stay out of this. You're nothing here. Nothing. I stood, my voice trembling but clear. She is everything here. More than you know. Daniel's jaw clenched. For a moment I thought he might raise his hand, but he didn't. Instead, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Rebecca wasn't much better. Later that evening, she cornered me in the hallway. Mother, listen to me. You're making a mistake. Whatever you're hiding, whatever you're planning, it has to stop. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly, I said coldly. Her eyes narrowed.
Fine.
Then don't be surprised when we do what's necessary. Necessary. The word lingered like smoke. That weekend, the storm finally broke. It was Sunday afternoon. Emily had just left after helping me with chores, her cheerful goodbye echoing in the empty hall. I was sitting in the living room, knitting, trying to calm my nerves, when I heard raised voices outside. The door burst open. Daniel, Rebecca, and David stormed in together. Their faces were set, cold, like a jury delivering a sentence. Daniel spoke first. "We've had enough, Mom. We know you're hiding money. We know you've made changes. And we're not going to sit around and let you throw our future away." Rebecca crossed her arms. "We've given you everything. We've been here for you. And this is how you repay us." I laughed bitterly. "Everything? You've taken everything. And still, it's not enough." David sneered from behind them. "You're old. You don't need it. Just sign it over and stop being selfish." My hands tightened on the arm of the chair. The audacity of hearing my 16-year-old grandson demand I surrender my life's work he had no part in, made my blood boil. "No," I said quietly but firmly. The room went silent. Daniel's face darkened. "Then you leave us no choice." Rebecca pulled something from her purse, a folder. She tossed it onto the coffee table. "We've already spoken to a lawyer. If you're not going to cooperate, we'll contest everything. We'll drag you into court. We'll make sure you're declared unfit to manage your own affairs." Unfit. The word cut deeper than any insult yet. They weren't just trying to take my money. They were trying to erase me. I sat there, staring at the folder, my body trembling. But inside, something stronger than fear rose. Because what they didn't know was that Mr. Harlan had anticipated this. The trust wasn't just a will, it was airtight. It bypassed probate. It couldn't be contested. They could hire every lawyer in the state, and still, they would end up with nothing. But should I tell them that now? Or let them stew in their own desperation? I looked up slowly, meeting their eyes one by one. "Do what you must. But remember this, you can't erase the truth. And one day, it will crush you." Daniel slammed his fist on the table. "We'll see about that." They stormed out together, leaving the folder behind. I sat in the silence, my chest heaving, tears stinging my eyes. But just as I reached for the folder, the phone rang. It was Mr. Harlan. "Lorraine," he said, his voice urgent. "I just received a notice. Your children have already filed a petition. They're trying to have you declared incompetent. A court date has been set." The room spun. Incompetent. Court. They weren't just threatening anymore. They had already begun. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "When?" "2 weeks," he said grimly. "Be ready." And just like that, the battle lines were drawn. 2 weeks. That's all I had before my own children dragged me into court to strip me of my dignity. 2 weeks before strangers in black robes and polished shoes would decide if I was competent enough to handle my own life. 2 weeks before Daniel and Rebecca attempted to legally erase me. I didn't tell Emily at first. I didn't want to burden her with the weight of it. But I must have worn the fear on my face because one morning, while she poured coffee, she touched my hand gently and said, "Lorraine, something's wrong. Tell me." The words spilled out of me. The petition. The court date. The accusations. Her eyes widened in horror. "They can't do that. They can't." "They can try," I whispered. She leaned forward, fire in her young eyes. "Then we fight." And fight we did. Mr. Harlan prepared everything. He gathered medical reports proving my health, my clarity of mind. He brought forward documents showing decades of careful financial management. But the strongest piece of evidence wasn't paper. It was me. I would stand, speak, and show the court that I was not the frail, incompetent woman my children wanted them to believe. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat at Harold's old desk, staring at his photograph. "Can you believe this?" I whispered to him. "Our own children, trying to erase me." In my mind, I heard his voice. "Lorraine, you're stronger than they think. Don't let them take your voice." So I promised him I wouldn't. The courthouse smelled of old wood and paper, the kind of place where lives are quietly dismantled or saved in a matter of hours. I walked in with my cane, Emily beside me, her arm linked through mine. Daniel and Rebecca were already there, standing with their lawyer. They didn't even look at me, just whispered and smirked like hunters waiting for the kill. David sat slouched in the back row, earbuds in, as if the entire affair bored him. When the judge entered, we all rose. My knees ached, but I forced myself to stand tall. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me weak. The proceedings began. Their lawyer spoke first, painting me as fragile, forgetful, incapable. He used words like decline, burden, and instability. He pointed to my locked doors, my hidden papers, twisting them into signs of paranoia. Rebecca dabbed her eyes with a tissue, pretending to cry. Daniel shook his head solemnly, playing the devoted son who only wanted what was best for his mother. And then it was my turn. Mr. Harlan stood and called me to the stand. My legs trembled as I walked forward, but when I sat down and looked at the judge, something inside me steadied. "Mrs. Carter," the judge said, "do you understand why you are here today?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied clearly. My voice didn't shake. "I'm here because my children believe I am incompetent. But I am not. I know exactly what I'm doing." Their lawyer tried to rattle me. "Mrs. Carter, isn't it true you locked your own bedroom door from your family?" "Yes," I said calmly, "because I caught them rifling through my belongings without my permission." "Isn't it true you've been hiding financial documents?"
Yes.
"Because my children were searching my house, trying to take what wasn't theirs." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The lawyer smirked. "So, you admit you're secretive, distrustful. Isn't that paranoia?" I leaned forward. "It's not paranoia when it's true." The judge raised his eyebrows. The lawyer sputtered. Then Mr. Harlan handed me a folder. "Mrs. Carter, would you like to tell the court what this is?" I opened it with steady hands. "This is proof of the estate my husband and I built. $50 million in investments, land, and accounts. This is what my children are after. Not my well-being. Not my health. Just this." Gasps filled the room. Daniel's face went pale. Rebecca's mouth dropped open. David finally pulled out his earbuds, his eyes widening. "50 million, he muttered. I turned to the judge. "I have spent my life working, saving, and sacrificing for my family. I gave them everything. But when I was no longer convenient, they called me a burden. They tried to erase me. They filed this petition because they don't see me as a mother anymore. They see me as a vault. But, Your Honor, I am not incompetent. I am not fragile. I am not finished." For a moment, silence filled the courtroom. Then the judge spoke. "Petition denied." The gavel came down with a sharp crack. I should have felt victorious. Relief flooded me, yes, but as I looked at my children's faces, twisted with fury, I knew this battle wasn't over. Because now they knew about the 50 million. And greed this deep doesn't die when a judge says no. It only grows hungrier. As I stood to leave, Rebecca hissed under her breath, "This isn't the end." Daniel's eyes burned into mine. "If you won't give it to us, we'll find another way." Emily tightened her grip on my arm, whispering, "I've got you. Don't be afraid." But as we walked out of that courthouse, my heart pounded with dread. Because I believed them. They would find another way. And the way they chose would push us all to the edge of destruction. The courthouse victory should have felt like freedom. The judge's gavel had declared me competent. My voice had cut through their lies, and the truth had been laid bare for everyone to see. But as Emily and I walked out into the cold air that afternoon, I felt no peace. Because my children now knew. They knew about the 50 million. And knowledge like that doesn't sit quietly. It gnaws, it festers, it drives people to madness. The days that followed were tense. My phone rang constantly, calls from Daniel, voicemails from Rebecca. At first they pretended. "Mom, let's talk this out. Mom, maybe we started wrong. We just want to understand. Mom, you know we love you." But beneath the sugar, I tasted poison. I ignored their calls. When I didn't answer, the messages turned sharp. "You can't hide from us forever. You think that babysitter cares more than your own children? You're old, Mom. Old people make mistakes. And mistakes get fixed. I saved every voicemail. A part of me knew I might need them one day. Emily urged me not to be alone. She began staying later into the evenings, sometimes even sleeping in the guest room. Her presence was a comfort, the only barrier between me and the storm outside. But the storm broke anyway. One evening, I heard the crunch of tires in the driveway. Headlights washed across the curtains. My chest tightened. It was nearly midnight, too late for visitors. Then the banging started.
Mom.
Open this door. Daniel's voice roared. Rebecca's followed, shrill and furious. We're not leaving until you talk to us. David's laughter cut through them both, cruel and mocking. Come on, Grandma. Don't make us wait all night. Emily froze beside me in the living room, her face pale. Lorraine, what do we do? My hands trembled, but I stood. We don't open the door. The pounding grew louder. The windows rattled. Mom, if you don't open this door, we'll break it down. Daniel shouted. Emily grabbed her phone. I'm calling the police. When she said the word police, the banging stopped abruptly. Silence hung in the air, heavy and threatening. Then I heard Daniel's voice again, low and venomous. This isn't over, Mom. Not by a long shot. The sound of retreating footsteps followed, then the screech of tires as their car tore away. I collapsed into the chair, my body shaking. Emily sat beside me, her arm around my shoulders. They're losing control, I whispered. They're not just after money anymore. They want power. Emily's jaw tightened. Then we make sure they never get it. The next morning, I met with Mr. Harlan again. I handed him the voicemails, the threats, the police report Emily had filed after the incident. They're spiraling, I said. I need to make sure they can't touch me while I'm alive. He nodded gravely. We'll put the house in the trust as well. That way, they can't force a sale or claim rights to it. You'll keep full control until your death. After that, it transfers directly to Emily. I signed the papers with a steady hand. Each stroke of ink felt like a shield locking into place. But when I returned home, I found something that made my blood run cold. My front door was unlocked. I knew I had locked it that morning. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. Nothing seemed out of place until I reached the kitchen. On the table sat a note. It read, "This house won't protect you. Neither will your babysitter." Emily found me standing over the note, my hands trembling. She snatched it up, her face pale with fury. They did this. They broke in. Yes, I whispered, my knees buckling beneath me. They've crossed the line. Emily wanted to take it straight to the police, but I stopped her.
Not yet.
If we go now, they'll deny it. We need more proof. We need them to expose themselves. So we waited. But the waiting was its own kind of torture. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the hallway made me jump. I began double-locking every door, sleeping with the lockbox under my pillow. And still, they found ways to torment me. Anonymous letters slipped under the door. Whispers of rumors spreading in town, that I was senile, unstable, dangerous. Strangers calling the house, asking questions about my finances. It was Daniel and Rebecca I knew, desperate people trying desperate tactics. Then came the breaking point. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. Emily had just left for the night, promising to return in the morning. I sat in the living room, knitting by the dim glow of the lamp, when the power suddenly went out. The house plunged into darkness. My heart raced. I fumbled for the flashlight Harold had kept by the chair. But before I could switch it on, I heard it, the sound of a window sliding open. Voices. Low, urgent whispers. I froze, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. Then a beam of light cut across the room, David's voice following it.
See?
She's here. Told you she'd be alone. Check the study, Daniel hissed. Find the papers. Rebecca's voice came next, sharp as a blade. And hurry, before she calls anyone. They were inside. My children. My blood. Breaking into my home like thieves. I stood slowly, my knees trembling, the flashlight shaking in my hands. Get out, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. The beam of David's flashlight swung toward me, blinding my eyes. Or, what, Grandma? You'll call your babysitter? They laughed, cruel, bitter laughter that didn't sound human. And in that moment I realized this wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was about erasing me. Because if I stood in their way, they were willing to make sure I didn't stand at all. The beam of David's flashlight burned into my eyes, and for the first time in my 76 years, I felt something more terrifying than fear. I felt my blood turning cold with betrayal. These were my children, my grandson, my flesh and blood. And yet, here they stood, creeping through my home like intruders, whispering like criminals, hunting me as if I were prey. Get out, I repeated, louder this time, though my voice quivered. This is my house. Leave now. Daniel stepped forward, his silhouette sharp against the glow of the flashlight. We're not leaving without the papers, Mom. Stop making this harder than it needs to be. Rebecca's voice followed, dripping with venom. You're going senile. You're being manipulated by that babysitter. You can't see what's right in front of you. My grip tightened around the flashlight. I see perfectly. I see greed. I see cruelty. I see children who stopped being mine the day they chose money over love. David laughed, the cruel chuckle of a boy who had never been told no. Save your speeches, Grandma. Just hand it over. Or maybe we'll find it ourselves. I shook my head. You'll find nothing here but shame. That was when Daniel lunged forward, trying to snatch the flashlight from my hands. We struggled, his strong hands against my frail ones. My body trembled, but I didn't let go. For a moment, I thought he might overpower me. But then, the front door burst open. Stop. Emily's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She rushed inside, her phone in hand, the screen glowing. The police are on their way. I called them the second I saw your car parked outside. Daniel froze. Rebecca cursed under her breath. David lowered the flashlight, his bravado faltering. Police? Daniel spat. You'd call the cops on your own children? Yes, I said firmly, my breath ragged. Because no child of mine breaks into my home, threatens me, and walks away as if nothing happened. Tonight, you've shown me exactly who you are. Minutes later, the red and blue lights washed over the house. Officers stormed in, separating us, taking statements. Daniel raged, Rebecca wept, David sulked. I sat on the couch, my hands trembling, Emily's arm around my shoulders. When the officers asked if I wanted to press charges, my heart ached. How could a mother choose that? But then I remembered the note on the table, the threats, the courtroom lies, the way Daniel's hand had nearly ripped the flashlight from mine. Yes, I whispered. Press charges. The officers nodded. Daniel shouted as they cuffed him. Rebecca begged. David called me a witch. But none of their words pierced me anymore. My heart had already broken long ago. Tonight, I was only burying what remained. The weeks that followed were heavy. Court dates, restraining orders, whispers in town. Some neighbors pitied me, some judged me. But I held my head high. For the first time in years, I was no longer hiding. And when the final ruling came, it was clear Daniel and Rebecca were forbidden from contacting me. David was placed under supervision. And I, Lorraine Carter, was free. Not free of pain. That would linger forever. But free of fear. Emily moved in with me after that. At first, she said it was to keep me safe, but in truth, she had become my family. She cooked beside me, laughed with me, listened to my stories, filled the house with warmth it hadn't known since Harold was alive. One quiet evening, I sat her down at Harold's old desk. I slid the thick envelope of documents across the wood. Emily, I said softly, this is all yours now. When I'm gone, everything Harold and I built, everything they tried to steal, it will be yours. Because you are the only one who ever called me family and meant it. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. Lorraine, I never wanted this for money. I love you because you're you. I smiled, my own eyes blurring. And that's why you deserve it. We sat in silence, our hands clasped, the weight of legacy passing not through blood, but through love. For months, peace returned to my life. The house once filled with tension now echoed with laughter again. The roses in Harold's garden bloomed brighter. My mornings felt lighter, my nights softer. But every so often, I would think of Daniel, of Rebecca, of David. And the ache would return. Not because I missed them, but because I mourned what they could have been. Greed had taken my children. Entitlement had stolen my grandson. And in their place, I had found a new family in the most unexpected soul. The greatest lesson of my 76 years had revealed itself at last. Family is not blood. Family is love. Family is who shows up when the world turns its back. On Thanksgiving Eve, my grandson had called me a burden while unwrapping a designer bag. But in the end, I left everything, not to him, not to my children, but to the young woman who held my hand, folded my laundry, and whispered, "You are my family." And when my time comes, I know Harold will be smiling. Because I didn't let greed win. I chose love. And that choice changed everything. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love is stronger than greed, and that family is chosen, not just born, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your story matters too.